So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. How do you buy a phone in 2018? We're talking specifically here about smartphones. Now, the smartphones are so diverse these days, it could take you forever just to try to decide which phone to buy. And that's why there's so many tech YouTubers and tech videos on YouTube to help you with that, because it's very hard to decide what phone to buy. We have phones all the way on the cheapest end for under 200 bucks for an Apple phone here in 2018 for the SE, all the way up to over $1,000 with taxes and cases and all that stuff for the iPhone 10 on the premium end. And then there's the phones that are in between, in the middle here. And there's just so many options. Like, how do you really decide? Well, let's break this down. We got 10 ways to do this. Number one, the first thing you need to decide is, do you want to use Android or iOS? Now, this might sound pretty common sense, but really what you want to think about is, do you want to customize? Do you really want to dig into your phone and have a robust file system? Then you definitely want Android. Do you want a more freedom feeling phone? A phone that you feel like you can tweak and do whatever you want at your own risks? Then you definitely want Android over here. Do you want a very secure operating system that you know you could count on each and every day, that is going to be, very fast and fluid and reliable? Then you want to really take a look at iOS. You just want to stay away from Android. If you're the type of person who wants a more simple to use phone, I definitely think you should either look at the Google Pixel series or the iPhone. These two are the most simple phones I think that you can buy right now. Samsung's a little more complex than both of the Pixel line and the iPhone line. Next up, let's talk price here. Let's talk value for price. Now, don't just, look at a premium smartphone and think like, oh, I don't need that much phone, when you might just need that much phone. Now, this depends. If you're a person who has a laptop, you have a tablet, and they're both powerful enough for your needs, then you might not actually need $1,000 smartphone to do everything. Now, yes, I know a lot of people will buy an iPhone 10, they'll buy a Galaxy S8 just for a fashion statement, just to, just because they want to have the best in their pocket. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we're talking about value for money, do you really need that? Well, I would say if you have a laptop and you don't really do a lot of things on your phone, like you don't use your phone for all your work related stuff, you don't use your phone for all your photography, you don't use your phone for, all the stuff that can really bring you back the money out of the phone, then you might want to consider a phone that's more in the $500 to $700 range versus $1,000 range smartphone. And even then, you could even consider things like the One Plus, which is going to be around $500, or even, as small as an iPhone SE, which is going to be basically $200. Those will get the phone task done just fine. Next up, after you consider ecosystem and price for value, you want to consider size, because there's a ton of them, and these are just some of the smaller phones that I currently have right here. But you want to consider, how big is your hand? Now, if you have really small hands, you definitely want to take a look at the iPhone SE. It's one of the only phones like this on the market. Also, you could take a look at, Sony's XZ Compact series, which is also a nice phone. It's got a wide angle camera. It's definitely one I've checked out, would recommend, is the Sony XZ Compact if you don't want to buy an iPhone SE. Now, if you're looking for more of a larger device, I think that you should definitely take a look at what Samsung's offering in the S9 or the S8 if you want to go last year's phone, or the iPhone 10 here, because these phones are really putting, a nice big screen and almost a perfect form factor. Small body and a big screen, just like the Pixel 2. You can see it has big bezels, but it's about the same size as the S8 right here. Or you can see the LG G6, for example. Small body, but big screen here, just like the iPhone 10. So these phones right here, you got to decide on size. You got to decide, do you want big screen, small screen? If you want something that's not as small as an iPhone SE or XZ Compact, take a look at the Pixel 2 or the iPhone 8. These two are some of the best you can get in the small size phones. Next up, you want to decide carrier. Are you going to be using your smartphone with a carrier contract, or are you going to be using it with prepaid? Now, personally, I go to prepaid route because I don't like having ties to no one. I like, being able to buy a phone whenever I want, pop my SIM card in whenever. So personally, I'm not even with a carrier right now. That might change in the future because, sometimes you can't get the latest iPhone unless you're with a carrier. But for now, I'm going prepaid, and I kind of recommend it if you do want that freedom feeling like you're not tied to nobody. Because when you get into these, contracts and carrier plans, yeah, they might seem incentivized. Oh, well, we're going to give you this much off. But at the same time, over time, you actually pay more for the phone than you would initially. So you got to take that initial hit on the investment. So you got to pay more for the phone up front if you do go with the prepaid route. but at the same time, you're never tied to no one in that case. Now, T-Mobile kind of doesn't do contracts anymore, so they're one that's an exception here, but some of the other ones I would just stay away from personally. After that, let's take a look at the features that matter the most to you. Do you want a great camera? Do you want great battery life? Or do you want a great screen? Now, most of these phones here that you're seeing offer all of those things, you know, in one package, but don't discount older phones, because older phones have great cameras as well. Like the S7 Edge still has a dual pixel AF camera, which is actually similar to the Canon that I'm shooting this video on. And yeah, it might be a little bit older looking than the newer phones, but you're gonna still get similar camera as newer phones. So you can actually get a good camera on a 1 to 2 year old flagship. If you're looking for a great battery life, I definitely want to recommend, you know, Samsung's devices. I think they get better battery life right now than the iOS side because of iOS 11. Now, that might change with iOS 12, but if you take a look at like a Note 8, for example, that phone could keep going and going. Pixel series also does very well with the optimizations to Android 8.1. But right now, it's not the best recommendation for battery for me on iOS, but this could change with iOS 12. If you care a lot about software updates, there's only two options here. If you picked Android, go with the Pixel. If you picked iOS, go with, you know, basically any, you know, iPhone. It's gonna work. Next up, you gotta ask yourself, do I need a used phone or a new phone? Because just because phones become obsolete in terms of the media marketing, that doesn't mean that the hardware is obsolete. I could pick up an S7 Edge to this day and feel like, wow, this phone feels just as nice as an iPhone 10. It feels just as nice as an iPhone 8, Galaxy S8. I mean, this is a stunning smartphone right here. Look at that Edge. Very, very beautiful. And this thing was like $600 less than all these phones. So just because a phone gets old, the value, you know, what you're going to pay for it goes down, doesn't make it obsolete. They build these phones to last, and they do last. You just don't see them in the news anymore after the hype, because in technology, it continuously goes forward, and it goes forward very rapidly, as you've been seeing lately in the past year or so. And if you're going to go the used route, I do want to recommend you consider factory refurbished. So if you're looking for a refurbished model, look for factory refurbished. What this means is that somebody bought the phone, there was an issue with it, they took it back to the factory. Google, for example, will restore that thing to brand new, or Samsung will restore that thing to brand new factory condition, and you're basically getting a new phone for less money. So factory refurbished is a great way to go. Used, you're basically going to pay less money than a factory refurbished, but you're not sure how many battery cycles are on that phone, or if there's scratches or anything like that. That could be a problem with used. So you really got to, you know, trust the seller when you're going with the used route. But if you are going the used route, I consider that I recommend you guys check out Swappa, or you check out eBay. But make sure when you're on eBay to look at the seller's rating. Make sure they have at least over 100 sells, and they have over 5 stars on, you know, in their last month, they've been doing really well. Make sure that's on point, and then you should definitely get a great phone. Next up, iPhone is not the only option. So a lot of people think, you know, back in the day when Android was slow and it was not even close to the iOS experience, you know, this has like been rooted in the people's subconscious mind that basically, oh, you know, iPhone is the best. I mean, I know people that use a crappy Android, never tried a flagship Android. These days, Android phones are equal, if not have surpassed what you can get on an iPhone. So don't just think iPhone is the only option these days. You can have a similarly great experience on Pixel, Samsung, LG, for example. And lastly, consider Underdog options. It's going to save you a lot of money here in 2018. LG G6. Now, of course, you're not going to get your money back that much out of an LG G6, for example, but you could find this thing at under 300 bucks. Do you believe that? Look at this phone right here. This is the iPhone 10, and look at the LG G6. Don't tell me those don't have some similarities. Dual cameras, similar size form factor, and both have, you know, screens that are really, you know, nice in a small body. And you're going to get that for less than most of these phones on the table, just because LG is not a popular brand anymore. They're just not, you know, competing in the marketing with Samsung and Apple, but doesn't mean they're not making equally as great phones. They pretty much are. You know, LG V30 is also plummeting in value. So you can get an LG phone for much less money, and you're going to get a similar experience. So consider that Underdog brands, even OnePlus, for example. And that's it. That's how I would recommend you buy a smartphone in 2018. On this video helpful, enjoyable, do me a favor, click that like button for me. And if you're new here, consider subscribing for more S9 content coming in a few days. I'll catch you all in the next one. Be sure to be well, and peace.